How's it going? It's been a little bit, but I figured I'd better do a video update. Um, if you've been paying attention on Instagram, you'll know that I finished a floor drop for a Mazda Miata, and that car left, and this car came in today. The guys that have been working on cars for our buddies, so they share trailers and stuff occasionally. So this is a new build. Obviously, it doesn't have a cage yet. This is going to be a race car soon. The first thing I'm going to do is actually do the floor drop before the cage goes in, because it'll be a whole lot easier. So there'll be a lot of repeat stuff if you've seen what I've done with the previous car. But this is going to get a cage, and that'll be a fun adventure. I've got Miata parts that I got to figure out where to put out of the way. And that box has the kit for the floor drop that I'll be installing. Same place that we got the last one. And we'll see how this one fits, because this is slightly different than the previous car. A little bit different, not too much. So it'll be cool. And yeah, I've got well, just for the record, that's not mine. I wish it was, but I'm not going to comment too much on that, just in case the person who actually owns it doesn't really want it commented on. So far, thumbs up for the Everlast Power iMig 140E. Couple little quirks that I don't like, but overall, it's a really fantastic little box. Does everything I need it to do, and I'm really happy with it. Shop it might not look too much different, but actually a lot's been going on. I've actually been going through and organizing this box. Oh, that reminds me. Those go there. And I did actually get the sticker when I was in Baghdad. I'm still not set. As you can see, this is mostly just putting like with like. Not really super organized yet. I'm just trying to get stuff together, and like that's just all chemicals and paints and stuff that I used to have at home, or former home I should say. That's only one of several more toolboxes. I've got the other tool carts. That has been and still going to remain the tool cart for my mill, and also the precision measuring tools, which are in this bin right now, because I was working on this piece. So as you can see, it needs some holes drilled and located. So what the point of this is a Honda B Series ATI Super Damper, and I don't know if I have that here with me. Is it in this box? It might be in this box. It is. Hold on a second. This is the regular D series this is the regular D series Honda D series crank damper. as you can see, it's actually larger than this one. This is the B Series Street version. So it has the alternator and power steering, maybe air conditioning, second belt portion on it. The hub on this one, I don't happen to have it handy, but the hub on this one has the belt portion on it. So, man, is my phone record? I hope my phone's actually recording this right way up. If not, I'm gonna have to re-record it. Whatever. If it looks funny, I apologize. The issue with this is that when you have a lowered car on the 2nd gen CRX or 4th gen Honda Civic, this shell can actually come in contact with the front radius rods in the suspension. And that's really bad, especially when you're in a turn and all of a sudden your engine wants to stop because this is rubbing on the suspension. So this is a smaller diameter and actually more compact. I think a little bit lighter too. Well, it's lighter, especially now that it's got an aluminum hub. So I made this hub out of that chunk of aluminum, or a piece of that chunk of aluminum. Still have some finishing up to do. This is where the crank pulley snout fits in here. Finish on that is actually, let's see if I can, it's actually pretty darn good. It's just with the boring bar. But the floor here is where the heavy duty washer for the bolt that bolts this on goes, and that needs to get flattened out, and that's going to get done in the mill. The lathe that I was using, the tooling with it and the rigidity of it wasn't quite good enough for me to be able to get in there and do a reverse cut from the center out and get a radius in there that I need, because you don't want a sharp corner on aluminum stuff. That would be bad. So I'm going to get that set up in the rotary table, and that's going to get faced or counterboard or something, whatever. And then this is going to get taken out to final diameter once I make sure that this is indicated in, and also the thickness of this is set correctly, because right now I left it thick so I have enough to cut away. And as you can see, it still needs holes, and it also needs a keyway broached. And for whatever reason, Honda decided in their somewhat infinite wisdom to use a really strange, that's a reamer, here we go, keyway size. It's 4.5 millimeters. Now this is a broach bushing that I made when I did the crank pulley for that car way back in the day, and this has an even smaller crank snout, so this doesn't actually fit snugly in there. But hold on a sec. This is a 5 millimeter broach that has been ground. You can see the shoulder there has been ground to 4.5 millimeter. So this is going to cut keyway there, and I started a bushing here. I goofed one side. Well, I won't say goofed. It was just barely a little bit too big, but when I had clamped this knurled section, originally extended to the end, when I had clamped that knurled section, it wasn't centered, So by the time I cleaned that up, it was too small, it was too loose on the bore here. That's the good side. That's too much. You want to have a really nice snug fit. That's a nice snug fit. Barely any rocking in there. That'll give a nice straight cut. So basically what I'm going to do is mill a slot very much like that into this piece. And then the broach will fit into the guide bushing. And since that's going to be in this, basically it's going to locate the teeth of the broach to the center, then that'll give you a keyway that's cut at a proper location. So if you look carefully, let's see if I can get a visual of this. This is tapered lengthwise, so the tooth here sticks up farther than the tooth here, and when you push this through, as it goes down, the teeth take material out, and then you end up with a keyway like that, basically. And I'm going to be lining up everything with the original pieces, because I can actually orient the keyway on the original hub with that, because the keyway is the same size. That'll give me a good visual reference on making sure that the timing marks, where are they? There's the timing marks. Make sure that they're lined up pretty accurately. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but I try. It just makes things easier when you're syncing up the actual ignition timing with the called for electronic timing maps. If you can get it to be accurate, then it just helps everything. Makes people freak out less, basically. Because it doesn't actually really matter what that number actually is, as long as they agree, and then you can tune from there. But it's usually good to keep things OEM, so you know, for whatever, like most Hondas, at least D series, the base ignition timing is 10, 12, 14, or 16 degrees before top dead center. So if you can keep that lined up within a degree or two, it just provides a really good sanity check. So for the holes here, there is, let's see if I can point it out. Oh yeah, it says offset hole. That hole with the mark there is actually set off on there, so you can't just drill a bolt pattern. You have to be careful of that. I usually use, do I have them here? Excuse me. I don't know if I have them here. Yeah, that's the bad thing about trying to organize everything. So one alternative is to use this. This is the Slocum Quick Spot Junior. It's a variable diameter transfer punch, and it has a tapered cone that's spring loaded. So if you want to find the center of this, you press it down, and the taper lets you find the center, and then you dink it with a hammer. And that gives you a very accurate center. Now, this is too small to actually work on these tapered ones, but these holes here are for the timing wheel, which is also something that I have to modify, because these holes that are already in it don't match up with the bolt pattern that is on the damper. So I have to drill those out Um, and that's another thing that's going to be done on the rotary table. That'll be fun to show. But for these, I usually use transfer punches, and I know I've seen them somewhere. I don't know where they've got to. They're somewhere in the shop. Yeah, they're around. Somewhere. I'll find them. That's the reamer again. Yeah, so I'll find the transfer punches and use those to get those marked. I could do that specifically on the mill. I may still end up doing it on the mill, but I would at least prefer to have a visual reference on where the holes are supposed to be. It'll also help me line up the holes for spotting the holes so I can drill them nice and straight. I don't really like drilling on the mill because the quill is broken. The quill hand feed is broken, literally in two. That's the drive shaft right there. Came to me like this. Evidently this is a common issue with these mills, because one of the other two people I know that has them has had the exact same issue. I think it was a transport issue. I never got the original handle assembly. It was set up a lot like, if you're familiar with a mag drill, they usually have the angled tapered piece with the 3 handles on there. If I'm remembering correctly, either that or it was just a regular hand crank like this. Not so much like that. It's either like something like that or one of the tri-spoke things, like on a drill press, something like that. And I think what happens is that with the block that goes here, if you knock against the piece that sits here, like all of this stuff, you can actually bind it up and then break it. This actually doesn't have a power feed down. The knee has a power feed up, but when you're drilling small holes, that kind of scares me because the tools can snap or explode. I've seen that happen. I've done that before with this because hand cranking the knee takes quite a bit of effort. I mean, you can do it slowly. It's not horrible to do, but I'd rather not ruin a piece that I spent 2 days making. It's not that I'm that slow, it's just that I was working on an unfamiliar lathe, trying to hold tolerances to under 1/1000 of an inch, and it's challenging. It takes a little while to do. And I have to say that it turned out really well. The fit on it is really good. I'm not going to take it out right now just because it's a pain. I gotta basically, I take a hammer handle, stick it there and smack it down, and that pushes the hub out. I'm sure there's another way to do that, but that's just what I found the most expedient. So, but yeah, I'm actually really happy even with how I got the taper. I could have done maybe a little bit better here, but the lathe that I was using didn't have a power cross feed, so the finish on the rear here and here is all hands. But I think I did a pretty consistent job. I can't even feel any variation there. It feels nice and smooth, and you can kind of tell it's pretty consistent. Not perfect, but it's pretty consistent. It's a little rough, but that's a non-critical surface. But at least it's consistent looking. I don't like having too many inconsistencies. Like, that is going to get cleaned up and we'll be good to go. So if anybody is interested, I've got at least enough material for another 3 of these. So you can hit me up and I can make you one. It's not super expensive, but it does take some time. you're basically paying for my time. The material cost is quite a bit less significant than the labor cost. Heck, if there's enough demand, I'll actually get it drawn up in CAD and send it out for CNC. And I might still end up having to do the keyway on them, depending on what machine shop what the machine shop would be capable of. Because yeah, that's definitely a different thing to have to do. So yeah, that's basically it. I've been working on getting the previous car out. The owner's really happy with that and met the deadline that he had. And yeah, I've had a lot of personal stuff going on. That's why I haven't really been updating as much. Most of it's not good, actually. I'm not going to get into it too much here. If you want to ask me, you can ask me. I'll tell you, but it's not something that I want to get into publicly, at least not yet. Good news is, though, that Dumford, the truck, is actually running again. And the issues seem to have stemmed to the transfer case not having any fluid in it since I bought it, probably. So the output shaft munched itself, and it's full of lots of chunks of steel. I wheeled and dealed and ended up getting a transfer case as part of another sale, and my brother-in-law actually put the transfer case in and tested it out, and I can go pick it up tomorrow, which is awesome. And we're dealing with some snow, which made driving this thing on rain slicks, or rain semi-slicks, rain tires, Hoosiers, interesting. Of course, there were donuts attempted, but this thing doesn't have enough power. It's not running right to actually do anything that was even worth recording, so didn't even bother with that. So yeah, that's about it. My phone's about out of battery. I'm just cleaning up the shop. I'm going to be starting on the 2002 soon, so look forward to that. If you got any questions about that, hit me up. It's mostly going to get structural stuff and some modifications, but we're mostly worried about rust right now, and then some of the fun stuff will come later. And there'll be more work on this later in the coming week. This is not going to be raced right away, but once we figure out what we're doing with the previous engine and get that squared away, this will be out on track, and I'm looking forward to it because I think it's going to be significantly faster. Not a whole lot faster, but significantly faster. So, well, that's about it. So if you got any questions, hit me up. As always, I am around on Instagram, not so much on Facebook, and comment on YouTube. So that's about it. Have a great week. Have a great rest of your weekend. Be awesome and rock on. Bye.